God bless everybody today. It is February 23rd of 2025, and I wanted to do a video before we get to March of 2025 because, in my opinion, we're going to see a lot happening in the next year as we get into these astrological events that are occurring between March of 2025 and March of 2026. As you're watching a complete breakdown of the Hamas ceasefire, the Hezbollah war is ramping up and also expanding through Israel into Syria and Lebanon. And I believe, as I've been stating for some time, we would see Turkey invade into Lebanon around the end of March, right after Ramadan, probably around March 31st. So we'll see how that plays out. So you're going to see once you get into March, around March 13th and 14th of 2025, you're going to have a starting of a complete blood moon, which will set off this next year going into March of 26, because once you get into March of 26, of March 2nd and 3rd, you also end in a complete blood moon event. Now, this is extremely important, in my opinion, as you're going to see on the charts as we move forward, that this is, it moves through Ramadan and Passover on both of these sets of events, and there's a 15-day gap of time between both sets of events also. So I think it's extremely important that we should be looking at these things. So let's take you right to the chart, and I'll show you exactly where this is on the Paradigm 2030 chart so you can understand what this information is I'm trying to explain to you is. This is extremely important. You guys, you need to understand when you have a year wrapped in blood moons, it's a bad sign. And then the timing of them is really extremely important that I'm going to show you. So if you go to endofdayssurvival.com, and like I say, I've been doing this for years. I've never sold anything on this site. I have updated these two files here, okay, as you can see. If you click on this one, this will bring up the Paradigm 2030 chart that we're using so that you can actually go out and review this chart. So I have made all the adjustments from the text file to the chart, so you should be able to follow the chart easily. And that's why I do it this way. You can pull the chart up, you can follow the text file all the way down through basically the next 4.5 years, 4 years, 7 months. I will give you your date stamp right now, and if you don't know what that means, we're 1600, so you're about right in here. You're 1660 days from today, which is February 23rd, 2025, to the Feast of Trumpets of September 10th of 2029. In my opinion, that is the removal of the body of Christ, or what people would call the Rapture event. You may or may not agree with that, but I believe that if you follow the video, you'll learn so much because it gives you so much information other than just a rapture event and a few things. Look, he's giving you a history lesson that's going to play out. If you listen to him, you'd actually know what to look for as we're moving forward and know how to prepare properly, I believe. So I just want you to understand that there's so much detail here for a reason, because I'm trying to give you the details so you know how to get ready for what's getting ready to happen. Now look, this section down here is what I'm mostly concerned about in the next year, and so we'll blow that up and I'll show you what I'm talking about in that area. I just want to explain this real quick, and then we'll go to the text file, and then you can follow the chart down. You can see I've added a lot of information out here. It's extremely important. Each of these steps matter to what's getting ready to happen out here, and it's going to affect you. So I hope you're paying attention, please. I pray to God every night that you guys wake up and see what's getting ready to happen here. But look at this. This is where you're going to end. Okay, so let's start here first. So this is where I'm going to start on the text file, is January 12th of 2025, when I thought Egypt, based on this paradigm stamp, was going to be affected here. And look at what Egypt's having issues with now. They're trying to be forced to have refugees, and all kinds of different things are affecting Egypt right now. So I'm letting you know right now that Egypt is under not only plagues, they're going to be under sword. Turkey's going to attack them before October of this year, and things are going to get ugly for Egypt. But look at these blood moons as you go into this year. Okay, this is the area we're looking at. You start your original March 13th and 14th, 2025 blood moon event, which is a complete blood moon. Okay, and then you go into a 15-day event where you have a partial solar eclipse. But then look here, you start out with a annual solar eclipse in 26 and February 17th, and you move to March 2nd and 3rd with a complete blood moon. So you're wrapped this next year. You're wrapped between two blood moons. Now, the other thing I think is really interesting is on this very timing, you're right in the middle of Ramadan, okay, and you're entering Passover here. But then when you get over here to this date here, you're also entering Ramadan and Passover also. So you got Ramadan actually starts on the very first day of the solar eclipse over here, okay? And it would work 30 days down the line, so it would actually end up over here. Yes, there's a lot of information going on in this section here, and we're going to go over all that. But just realize, and in the middle of this, you have another complete blood moon around the Feast of Trumpets. Here. So, look, you got three strikes, three blood moons, three complete blood moons in a year. You need to pay attention to what is getting ready to happen out here. So I'm not going to use this chart much, but you can go out, look at the chart where we're going down the text file. Hopefully I didn't make too many mistakes, because there's a lot going on out here, and I'm always trying to update this and make it as right as I can for you guys. We're going to start right around here in the text file on January 12th of 2025, and we're actually going to work all the way down the chart. Okay, now these are the events up on the top. Okay, so you can see that, all the events. These dates down here are the Jewish calendar dates that go along with that, because that matters. Actually, if you are following the Jewish calendars, you will see events coming up and you'll sort of cringe, because you know they're either, well, they're bad or maybe they're good. I mean, there are some good events. And then, like I say, when you get down to the bottom area here, that gives you all the blood moon and other events that are occurring in the next 4 years, 7 months. So on this paradigm 2030 chart, I had two deficits that I wanted to fix. One was I had not really addressed the two witnesses in the timeline, and the other thing that I had not really addressed were the timing of the trumpets, the 7 trumpets. So I wanted to do that in this video, and those adjustments have been added to the paradigm 2030 chart that I just showed you. So the question I'm hopefully trying to get you to ask yourself is, why do the two witnesses matter to the timeline? Look, the two witnesses prophesy for 1260 days, and then they die, and then they lie in the street for 3.5 days, and then they resurrect, probably on the 7th trumpet. So if they're prophesying for 1260 days, they don't come up exactly on the signing of the treaty, which starts the 1260-day process. They come up 4 days before that. So I wanted to apply that to the beginning of the chart prior to the covenant being signed, as well as them perishing in the street and then also being resurrected as we move forward. The second thing that I wanted to address on the chart was the timing of the 7 trumpets. Look, I've tried to explain to people many times, if you just read the Bible for what it states and not try to build your narrative around things, you'll realize that the Bible will pretty much give you a straightforward answer in most cases. So when you look at the trumpets and you look at Revelation 8, chapter 8, verse 1 and 2, it says something extremely important. And I brought this up many times in my videos. Look, in Revelation chapter 8, verse 1 and 2, it says what? The seventh seal is broken. You have about a half an hour of silence, and then he hands out 7 trumpets. Okay, so I wanted to address that once you get to the trumpet phase, what happens in those 7 trumpets as you move forward in the next 4 years, 7 months, because they're going to start to really impact you around March of 26, in my opinion. And just the third thing I wanted to bring up is I've added a lot of additional information to the chart, especially the Jewish dates are pretty much on all the dates now, so you can see that. In this chart, you're going to see the dates in blue, the blood moons and things like that in red, the solar eclipses in yellow, special events in like green or a darker blue. So just realize that I've done that on purpose so that you can see things easier. But this will follow these charts to the letter if I've caught all my mistakes. So as we're going through here, like I say, I'm going to show you the trumpets and stuff, and that's important. But look at the timing as we go through this text file on the timing of the 2 witnesses and when they actually come up based on what he's telling us, and when they actually die and when they rise, which they should be raptured or taken up with the body of Christ at the same time as everyone else. So this is extremely important, and actually if you look at those verses attached to that, it tells you once you see the 2 witnesses rise that you just don't have any time left. You need to flee the city or into the mountains because this story is over. Now, all of the date stamps for the 5 kings that I've isolated down based on history from the old kings to today that reflect each other perfectly in the leadership and the time that they've been there are in this paradigm also, or in this text file also. You can sort of, I'll point them out if I remember, but this would be a paradigm stamp. If you go to these verses, you look up that king, which reflects the king that I tell you based on history. You can actually go to the date that I build here and you can see these dates. I'm not going to go into that too deep right now because this video would take hours. Just realize that each of these date stamps have been verified for years. I've been working on this for literally a decade, so I've shown you with great detail how I found all of these date stamps, and you can go through my past videos and see them. But I just want you to realize that they are all attached because when you go into the chart, they're in there, okay? And like I say, we're going to start at January 12th of 2025 in the chart and go through the end of the chart all the way to the end of the story. So if you followed me at all, you realize that I don't believe that God will ever leave us in the dark. I believe he'll give us all the information we need to know. He'll actually draw it out, and very few people will pay attention to it or see it or even care because they didn't care before. Look, the prophets ran around and literally did everything possible to try to get people to understand, and nobody paid attention to them. They didn't care. I'm not a prophet. I'm just an analyst. But I'm just telling you that he's going to tell us. And you know what? We're hoping to find people with some real information down here. And if things are getting ready to happen, he's going to bring the truth out to his people. It's just that simple. We're his children. He's not just going to leave us wandering around out here. It's ridiculous. So look, I've spent a decade building these paradigms to give you these dates and broken this down with a lot of effort to make sure that we can understand what's getting ready to happen. I'm pretty sure in the last 2 years things have been somewhat playing out, so I'm guessing that they're going to play out in the future. So these are my predictions for the next 4 years, 7 months, or 1660 days as we go to the Feast of Trumpets of 2029, September 10th. So you can follow the paradigm 2030 chart as we're going down this. Now realize you've got a lot going on in the Middle East right now. You have a Hamas ceasefire that's getting ready to collapse. There's not a lot of alive prisoners or hostages, I should state, in this case, because they're Israeli hostages. There's not a lot of them left. The secondary phase of the ceasefire is getting ready to be implemented, but it doesn't look like it's getting ready to happen because Hamas is mistreating Israelis people, and so they have stopped this process at this moment in time, and I didn't think they'd ever get to the second phase anyway, once they got to you know, dead people. It's just a terrible thing to give hostages away that have died under duress, live people in their place. It's evil. Anyway, it's extremely important you understand that. Look, you also have a Hezbollah war that's accelerating. Israel's moving into the West Bank. They just moved a whole bunch of refugees out, like 40,000 of them. They're expanding into not only Syria, but Lebanon. And like I say, I believe Turkey's going to start entering this war here soon from the north around the end of March, right after Ramadan. And you have a potential destruction, or not a destruction of Iran yet, but you're going to get an attack on Iran to try to slow down their possible nuclear capacities here, because they have their enrichment possibilities. They just have to have a delivery system, and that is what they're working on right now. And so everybody's in hyper mode to try to figure out how to deal with all this. And if you're not seeing this and you're not paying attention to the Middle East, you're missing the game. You can look at Ukraine, China, all these other places, but the game, God's game, is in the Middle East. So you need to be watching his game. So let's go down through here real quick, and I'll try to be as quick as possible, but I'm going to try to point out things as I go. So January 12th of 2025, you have Egypt starting to be affected by plagues, famine, and sword, and they are being affected right now. Look, they want all these Palestinian refugees to go to Egypt and to Jordan and all these places. They're pushing back. Egypt's doing a massive buildup at the beginning of the year. That's going to happen with the Battle of Gaza. So Egypt's going to actually push up here before October of this year, and they're going to end up going against Turkey around Gaza. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what's going to happen. That's how it played out in the past, and so it's going to play out the same way in the future if you just pay attention. Turkey's going to come down into Lebanon soon, and then they're going to go down into Palestine and head up with a war against Egypt, which is going to collapse Egypt completely down, and then Turkey's going to end up going against the Kurds and Iran before the end of this year. So you need to understand what's getting ready to happen here, okay? But I have to set this up so you guys know just how dire your situation is right now. Look, so when you get into March 1st, we start getting into some really crazy stuff in the next year. March 1st of 2025 is one Adar, and that's like a plague day in Egypt. Okay, just realize it. We're already starting off with a plague day of Egypt as Ramadan begins. And so you can see one Adar, and I'm moving forward for just a second just to show you, is a plague of darkness. It's the 9th plague to strike the Egyptians for the refusal to release the children of Israel from slavery. So just understand that right there on the very first day going into March, first day of Ramadan, you're going into a plague day. So you can see Ramadan starts on March 1st of 2025, ends on March 30th of 2025, okay? But it's interesting that the first day of Ramadan's on 1 Adar. In the middle of all this, between the beginning and end of Ramadan, you have a 15-day blood moon solar eclipse event, okay? So if you go to March 14th, which this would be the start of the evening, you're going into the complete blood moon, and you come out as a partial solar eclipse on March 29th. That's a 15-day gap of time. So just realize it. And then this happens again when you go into March of 26, but it's reversed. You actually have a solar eclipse and then a blood moon. Okay, so that's what I said. It's wrapped, the whole section's wrapped into 3 blood moons, actually, if you go into September. And so the day right after this 15-day event, Ramadan ends. And you start into the beginning of the new Jewish calendar of Nisan 1. So that timing is really interesting. And then see, I've thought for some time we would see, I've been talking about this for a while now, that we would see Erdogan invade Lebanon and start a siege. They'd invade Lebanon around the end of March 31st, right after Ramadan. I don't think they'll do it before Ramadan. Plus, you're going to see that deteriorate in the next 5 to 6 weeks, and so Turkey's going to get into this soon. By the middle of this time between March and July, when actually Tyre, Lebanon would fall, we would see the siege of Tyre, Lebanon. And that would complete in the end of July or somewhere around July. That would then take you into... So one thing I wanted to address, we had a mirroring event in 2019. Trump pulled the troops in his first term on October 6th of 2019, as you can see here on the chart. This is the very beginning of the chart, okay? And what happened was, right after he pulled those troops on October 6th of 2019, Erdogan filled that vacuum, started a Operation Peace Spring against the Kurds in Syria and Iraq, and set up those 2 30-mile buffer zones on Yom Kippur on October 9th of 2019. What's interesting about that, which might be a reoccurring thing that's going to happen because Trump's getting ready to pull the troops based on that article that I showed you in the next 30, 60, or even potentially 90 days, which I think will take you to the end of Ramadan on March 31st of 2025, when he'll actually invade Lebanon. We had these COVID reports come out in mid-October right after this. Okay, so I don't know if anything will happen, but if Trump pulls the troops out in March of 2025 and then a few days later Erdogan fills that vacuum, we could see another global pandemic hit the world, because right after these reports in mid-October of 2019, by the end of the year in beginning of 2020, it was a global pandemic. So, and with all of the bird flu and COVID and everything going on out here, it would not surprise me if we saw a pandemic hit us between these 2 blood moon events here. Okay? And if you think about this, if you got a quarter of the world in war here as you're going into a 6 seal event, which is affecting 2 billion people or so, a third of the world being affected by trumpets as you move forward after the seals, you got a half of the world being affected as you go into a signing of a treaty here, okay, which is going to affect billions of people. And I don't know how you affect billions of people unless you throw a global pandemic down upon the world. You know, the war, like I've said, these wars that are going on right now are affecting a few million people at best, not billions. So when you're affecting half the planet, you could be affecting, 4 to 5 billion people. I'm just saying. So this is something I wanted to warn you about. You have a potential mirroring effect here of Trump pulling the troops, Erdogan filling the vacuum. This would happen in the future in March, and then you would have a global pandemic. So if you move this 2000 event forward, that would take you into this March 31st of 2025 event when Erdogan and Turkey invades Lebanon and starts a siege against Tyre, Lebanon. When you get into April 12th through the 20th of 2025, you have Passover. So that's another thing, you know, you're moving from these solar and blood moon events into a Passover event, not only in 2025, but 2026. So I think it's important that we bring up this topic of the Battle of Carchemish. This will affect the Kurds, this will affect Daniel 8, and this will affect Turkey greatly. I also believe that this will affect us in May or June as it indicates of 2025. And if you think about what I've been talking about, Erdogan of Turkey is going to invade Lebanon around March, the end of March of 2025, okay? In the same breath, though, there's a secondary front that forms. So when you look at Nebuchadnezzar and Alexander the Great, and what's interesting, if you go to Jeremiah 46 verse 2, it talks about how Egypt is being affected. Also on the Euphrates River, Carchemish is being affected by the king of Nebuchadnezzar in the 4th year of Jehoiakim. If you look at the president of Israel right now, which is not Netanyahu, the leader of Israel is Isaac Herzog. He assumed office in 2021, which is interesting because his 4th year would be 2025. Like I say, Isaac Herzog is Jehoiakim. The 4th year in Jeremiah 46:2 of this leader would be 2025, and the Battle of Carchemish happens in May or June. Okay? That's how this lines up. I'm not making these things up. It's in here, built in the Bible for a reason. I'm going to go down to this map because I think it will actually show you what I'm talking about here the best. So when you come down here, I use this map quite a bit. When you click on this map, it brings up this chart. Then we're going to zoom into this area here because that's where the Battle of Carchemish happened. And I think this will also give you context to Alexander the Great's movements, Nebuchadnezzar's movements that are going to mimic what Erdogan of Turkey is getting ready to do. So not only will Turkey invade into Syria and Lebanon by the end of March, around March 31st of 2025, based on what I'm seeing here biblically, we're also going to see a secondary front here that will come down from Turkey around May or June of 2025, called the Battle of Carchemish. Now this is extremely important because what will happen is they will then, once the Kurds fall at the Battle of Carchemish, they will collapse into Iraq, okay? But this is a strategic point in the battle because what will happen is the Kurds will be an issue up here around this area, and this is right along the Euphrates. The other thing that's going on here is you have that tomb of Suleiman Shah, which I talked about many times. Erdogan really keeps an eye on this tomb. It's a Turkish-owned tomb in Syria. It's been moved multiple times since like 2015. It's here on the Euphrates. Right now, this whole area is literally being bombed on the Syrian live map. So this whole area right now is under bombardment. I keep talking about. This is extremely important. This tomb of Suleiman Shah. Why is it important? Because it was one of the first sultans. Erdogan thinks he's going to be the new sultan. When Erdogan dies on the sixth seal on March 4th of 2026, he's going to be buried in this grave around this area here where these bombs are going off, right around this area, right along this main highway. That's where the tomb of Suleiman Shah is. Erdogan will be buried there right after the sixth seal between March 4th and March 19th, I believe, is what's stated on the paradigm, and then he will rise out of this grave into an antichrist figure. But the other important thing about this is, look, when Erdogan comes down into an invasion mode into Lebanon, the secondary front from May, June will also come down, and they will meet up, and they will end up doing a complete siege on Tyre from two different columns. Okay, so you have a column coming out of here around March into Lebanon, and then you're going to have another secondary column coming out around May or June, which will meet up with them, and then they will basically destroy Tyre by the end of July. So you definitely need to keep up with things on this. This one really matters. This all has to do with Osman I, which is the grandfather of the original sultans. It's part of the Ottoman Empire. It's been here a long time. Like I say, they've been moving this tomb for a long time, but now it's somewhat situated, I believe. Turkey's been trying to absorb it into its region. But now you have to think about this. Turkey owns or controls Syria through the Turkish-backed Syrian armies and the HTS. Now they're in the process of eliminating the Kurds. And think about this. When you saw the Free Syrian armies, the Turkish-backed Free Syrian armies, as well as the HTS take over this area, they pushed the Kurds all the way to the east of the Euphrates. Now Turkey's getting ready to push them out of Syria completely into Iraq. Okay? And in that same breath, he will own this tomb. He will just own it. And that will be his, that'll be his grave. And Antichrist will rise out of this place, based on my understanding. I have the siege of Tyre completing around July of 2025. Now, the reason I'm stating all these dates is I'm following two history lessons that we should all know if we're looking at the Bible, because we're watching Alexander the Great's movements when he consumed the whole Middle East in about a year and a half, and we're also watching Nebuchadnezzar's movements as he also moved through and did a similar same actions as Alexander the Great did. So I've shown you the maps of Alexander the Great and how he took over or consumed the whole Middle East, even Iran, Egypt, and everything, basically in about a year and a half. And so these dates follow his campaign. That's all I'm doing here, guys. I've done the research in history to find the campaigns, find when those attacks would have occurred back in the day. These are the dates that they give you. And also a lot of these date stamps that I'm giving you on the Paradigm 2030 chart are from the old kings. And so they're following a very specific story because it literally happened in the history of our human race. So like I say, you're going to see Turkey come down from Turkey into Lebanon around March. Then they're going to go into a siege of Tyre, Lebanon, which will complete around July of 2025. Then they're going to end up in another set of blood moon events as they go into Palestine. So in July of 2025, we would see Turkey basically take over Lebanon. Turkey would also start a first siege of Israel and Jerusalem that lasts approximately 3 months based on Nebuchadnezzar. He goes down and deals with Jehoiakim. He gets captured, so the leader's captured from Israel, and then his son comes into place for about 3 months, and then Nebuchadnezzar goes down into Egypt. Similar process as Alexander. Nebuchadnezzar goes down into Egypt, and then when he comes back, he takes the kid captive and then puts in Zedekiah, and he's in there for about a year and a half, and then he comes back. Nebuchadnezzar comes back around a year and a half later and sieges Jerusalem for a second time. Same thing will similarly happen in Alexander the Great's movements also, as I'm going to show you here. One thing that we should be paying attention is, since Jehoiakim, or the leader of Israel, was captured on the first day of the siege by Nebuchadnezzar, would that be a process that might happen in the future? And so we possibly would see Isaac Herzog, the leader of Israel, captured on the first day of the siege of Israel around July of 2025. So if these leaders are mimicking leaders of the past, they should be easy to follow in the Bible. Because when you go to Joachim, it represents Isaac Herzog. When you go to Zedekiah, it represents Reuben Revlin. When you go to this son of Netanyahu, it's probably Netanyahu or Nathaniel. It's Netanyahu's kid or somebody in his lineage. So just realize when you go to Nebuchadnezzar, or in this case, Nebuchadnezzar would be Erdogan. So just realize they all reflect, based on their position and the years of leadership in their positions, these guys reflect exactly or mirror the leaders of the past. So in this process, look, it's not that hard. Turkey would come down into Lebanon. They would do the siege of Tyre. Then they would go into Israel. You would see the siege on Israel, the very first siege. That would be about 3 months. Jehoiakim is captured. Jehoiachin is put in place by Gog or Erdogan. He's there for 3.5 months. In that process, Egypt is being under siege. They're taken over. Then when Erdogan comes back from Egypt to go after the Kurds, which would be his next movement, and move back up to Tyre, Lebanon again to head towards Erbil, Iraq, Zedekiah would be put in place for approximately a year and a half. Then he would also rebel against, in this case, Gog, or also there's a transition into Antichrist here as we move forward. He would do that for about 18 months or a year and a half, and then he would also then be captured himself. And then you get what? You get the son of Netanyahu killing this last assigned leader by Antichrist as you move into the end of the story. So just realize that there's a process, and you can follow that if you go to Nebuchadnezzar. See the story of Jeremiah would be a good one to look at. Some say Jehoiakim dies there, but actually if you go in and look at 2 Kings 24 verse 1 through 17, he is captured for 3 years and rebels against Antichrist. So I'm going to go with the Bible version of this. When you get into September 7th and 8th of 2025, you get into another complete blood moon. So this is the second complete blood moon that you've had in about 6 months, okay? And then you're going to get another one in March of 26. Right after that, on the September 8th of 2025 blood moon event, you get another partial solar eclipse on September 21st of 2025. So when you get into the September 21st event, 2025, you have a potential Amos 8, 9, and verse 9 and 10. And what this is it's a solar eclipse that occurs at noon that turns the earth dark for 3 full days. No light, nothing. You can't even see your hand in front of your face. This is across the whole globe, okay? Or at least in the Middle East. Well, I'm going with he's telling us here. So you have this Severe darkness occurring in broad daylight. Significance is a judgment on the people of Israel, so it could be over there, might affect us over here. It affects us at noon or over there at noon. We're about 9 hours off Israel, if I'm not mistaken. And so the earth would be dark in the middle of the day, and it would be a sign of impending wrath on Israel in general, which is interesting because we're going into a 6-zeal event 6 months later during the March 15-day blood moon solar eclipse event that's coming up. So that's extremely important, I believe. Also, this lines up because when this eclipse occurs on September 21st, based on my analysis, that it turns the feast into mornings, and so the feast would be right after that. And this is one of the only times I see this occurring right afterwards. I thought originally maybe it might affect the 6th seal, but that's a March event in my opinion, and so that can't affect the fall feast. So I believe that this would happen either in 25 or 26. We would have to look at the correlations there. Now, one thing I wanted to bring to your attention to this event is this 3 days of darkness. The only thing that would burn would be 100% beeswax candles that were anointed or blessed. And I expect since they couldn't light anything, they would have had to known that they would have had to have had a couple of these lit so that they could light them prior to the event, so that they know that they could get through the 3 days of darkness, because they literally could not see their hand in front of their face. So this type of thing could start to happen. You do realize that a lot of what you're going to see in the next 4 years, 7 months, 1660 days is going to be extremely supernatural, and it's going to affect you in that manner. Also, when you go into October, now I put this with this October date, but it's reflecting this event up here. Also, when you go into October, right after the Feast of Trumpets, you go into what I call the siege of the Battle of Gaza, which is against Turkey against Egypt. Because after you get out of Israel of July, remember up here you're in July, you're sieging Israel, okay? Then they go down into Palestine, and Palestine, the Battle of Gaza occurs against Egypt, okay, because Egypt comes up to deal with Turkey, and then Egypt collapses. The Battle of Gaza ends around the October of 2025. Turkey then moves from Egypt to Tyre, Lebanon, then moves back to attack the Kurds and the Medes at Erbil, Iraq for the Battle of Gaugamela, also around October of 2025. So what will happen is Gaza will collapse. Egypt won't care because they just got kicked completely, and also they're surrounded by Put and Cush, so Egypt's in a really bad condition. Once Egypt falls, Put and Cush is also absorbed into the 10 nations. Then you have Turkey then move from Egypt back to Tyre, Lebanon. You can see this in the movements of Alexander the Great. I've shown you these maps I don't know how many times, and how this movement, and these are the exact dates that I could come up with when these battles actually occurred and the amount of time that they occurred in. And so you would see Turkey move from Egypt to Tyre, Lebanon, and then to Erbil, Iraq for the Battle of Gaugamela around October 25. The Kurds will collapse to Shush, Iran, just east of Baghdad, then to Iran, to Shush, Iran in the province of Elam. And that would happen that Iran would fall around January of 2026. That's a very specific date because on January 20th of 2026, the Battle of the Persian Gate completed. Okay, and then what happens? Once Iran falls, this would complete Daniel 8. So both Iran and the Medes both would fall as nations. You would see Daniel 8 complete. And so think about this. All 10 nations at this point are absorbed into this 10-nation conglomeration that's getting ready to head back for a second siege of Jerusalem. You've got Turkey going down into Lebanon. You've got him going down into Israel, down into Palestine. So Palestine and Lebanon are both taken over. They go into Egypt. Egypt's taken over. Put and Cush are both absorbed at that moment in time. He comes back to Tyre, goes to Erbil, Iraq. Iraq's consumed at that moment in time as they destroy the Kurds down to Iran. Iran would fall within less than a year, January of 26, okay? And then they would head back to Israel with 10 full nations, because all nations then that are in Ezekiel 38 and 39 are accounted for. But like I've told you, Daniel 8 prophecy occurs first. You've got to absorb Iran first, and then you get to the 10 nations going to Israel. And this is the problem right now. Nobody wants to talk. I've not seen anybody talking about Daniel 8, even though it's clearly a past history lesson that he tells you is going to play out in the future. He clearly tells you this. You got to do is go look, and it tells you it's a latter day event. Actually, if you go into Daniel 2, he tells Nebuchadnezzar that you won't understand all this because this is a latter-day setup to Daniel 7, which is a latter-day setup to Daniel 8, which is a latter-day setup to what? Daniel 9 through 12. And when you go into Daniel 9 and 11, it talks about the first year of Darius the Mede. Well, you just had a Kurdish leader elected on October 20th of 2024. So there you go. There's your leader, Darius the Mede, the new Kurdish leader. So that's what I mean. It's easy to follow it once you understand the kings and how they reflect kings of the past. Once you see Daniel 8 complete, you're still in Ezekiel 38 and 39 though. Because now all 10 nations are getting ready to do a siege on Jerusalem on February 11th of 2026. And there's a date stamp here based on Zedekiah Zedekiah chapter 1 verse 7 and 8, because he tells you that the red horse or second seal is standing in the myrtle trees, which is Israel and Jerusalem, and that they're going to go under judgment of seals. They're already under seal judgment, but they're getting ready to go under a sixth seal judgment as you're getting ready to go into March of 2026. Because look at what's coming up here, guys. Now you're ending up at the backside of your 3 blood moons, okay, for the year. You have an annual solar eclipse which starts on Ramadan, okay? Again, starts on, look, you got to understand that that's why you need to follow the Hebrew calendars, because it matters to not only the Jews, but the Muslims, and also should matter to the Christians. But look at this. On March 2nd and 3rd of 26, you have a complete blood moon. So you started with a blood moon up here that goes through September with another one midpoint and ends up wrapping in another complete blood moon. And in the middle of all this, you've got 3 solar eclipses in the middle of all this too. So this is extremely important, okay? Now I have a quick correction here, just so you know, I'm trying to correct this as I'm going through the video. So I'm inserting these, and so it may be a little dysfunctional, but I want to get this right. I had indicated that we had a 15-day gap, a period of time on in the video from February 17th to March 14th. That is not the case. It's actually March 4th. So I just want to correct that, let you know that that's there for a purpose, and it is a 15-day gap of time between February 17th and March 4th as you're going into a 7th seal event at this March 5th. So I just want to correct that and make sure that you're aware of that correction. Okay, and then it gets really gnarly, guys. I'm telling you, March 4th, by the time you hit about 5 weeks, 6 weeks from today, March 4th of 2026, the whole Middle East is going to be broke down. Iran's going to fall as a nation. Everything's going to be collapsing. The markets are collapsing. The whole world's collapsing. You've had these blood moon events wrapped into a whole year, and then you get a sixth seal event on March 4th of 2026. So there's a lot going on in the sixth seal event, and let's cover this real quick. So in Revelation 6, verse 12 through 17, you have the sixth seal and a massive earthquake, especially in Israel. We could see other various earthquakes around the globe. The sun is supposed to be darkened. You have a blood moon event. We just had that up here. That's wrapping into the next day, so that could be happening. Or it expands out longer than this second and third date here. Stars are falling from the sky, pummeling the 10 nations that are literally attacking Israel and decimating all 10 nations on the ground. And so all 10 nations, even Erdogan, is destroyed, and they're buried. And you can see that in the 7-year burial and the burning the weapons for 7 months. Then this is interesting because you have the heavens rolling up like a scroll, and the mountains and islands are moved from their places. I've talked about how this might allude to a space folding event where heaven would be teleported from its location, wherever that might be, through time, space, into our atmosphere above us, because everything is happening between heaven, mid-heaven, and earth as we move forward. And also as heaven rolls up and is teleported above us into our atmosphere, you may have not only a cosmic wind shift due to the literal body of heaven coming into existence and appearing above us, and you could even have a global polar shift of the north and south poles. It's amazing that right after that, these people are seeing something above them, and that they're causing them to run into caves and rocks because they're fearing the wrath of actually Jesus. In this case, it's not the wrath of God. This is the wrath of Jesus, which happens in Revelation 6:16. It clearly tells you it's the wrath of the Son, and that it's signifying that it's a day of great cosmic upheaval and impending doom. And this will start to change the globe. So look, at this point, a quarter of the world is in war in the Middle East, as well as it's affecting potentially 2 billion people. And that is going to be a massive effect in the next year. Okay? Look, we're not talking a couple million people here. We're talking billions of people are going to be affected here soon by what's getting ready to happen. Okay, and then once you see this decimation of these stars on Erdogan's armies up here, okay, that's attacking his nation, Jerusalem and Israel, they're going to be decimated and destroyed. And so what happens? Those 10 nations led by Turkey are destroyed and form into a residue of 4 regions. Okay, those 4 regions then get formed into a beast kingdom as the Antichrist rises as we move forward in the next few days, because actually he will rise in the next few weeks from here. When you get into March 5th of 2026, you get into a 7th seal event. This is extremely important because you have about a half an hour of silence in heaven, which is approximately 7.5 days on earth. So if you go from this March 4th event, 6th seal event, you add almost 8 days to that event calendar. That takes you to the 12th. So from March 4th to March 12th, that's 8 days approximately. And the reason I can say that is that if you take 1,000 years of ours to one day of God and break it down into time of 360-day calendar date, it will tell you that 1 hour of God's is 15 days on earth. It's not that hard to understand. At this moment in time, Satan is being prepared to be thrown down by the archangel Michael, okay? And then right after this half an hour of silence for 8 days, we start into what I call a trumpet phase. So I want you to think about this. You're at March 13th of 2026. On March 30th of 2026, you start your 1260 days to the Feast of Trumpets of 2029, September 10th. So lots going to happen here between March 13th and March 30th as you go into a signing of a treaty, okay, with the nations. So look how fast this is happening, and look how quickly it's going to happen as we move into the next 5-6 weeks here, I believe. We'll see what happens. So on March 13th, 2026, you have the first trumpet. When the first angel sounds, there's followed by it hail and fire mingled with blood, and it's cast down upon the earth, and a third of the trees will burn up, and all the green grass will burn up, probably in that third part of the world. Okay, when you get into, now these are every day you're going to get a trumpet here until you get basically a rising of an antichrist. Okay, so the first trumpet sounds, you get a third of the earth sort of burn up with fire. You get to the second trumpet on March 14th, 2026. You get this massive mountain burning with fire, thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea becomes blood. A third of the creatures are killed in the sea, and a third of the ships are destroyed. All in one day, okay? Massive judgments that are getting ready to happen. When you get into March 15th, 2026, you get a third trumpet judgment. A great star falls from heaven. I've thought maybe this might be Archangel Michael as he's opening the pit on the fifth trumpet here. We will see. Burning. Now this, look at this imagery. This is, to me, this is Archangel Michael. He's burning as if it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers, upon the fountains of the water, and its name is called wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Now, it could be a star or an asteroid or something like that, or it could be, as it indicates a lot of time, a star is an angel. And you do have a massive angel named Michael coming up in the fifth trumpet here. So I'm trying to speculate what that might be a little bit. When you get into March 16th, you have a fourth angel, which smites a third of the sun, a third of the moon, a third of the stars, and a third of them become darkened, and the day shone not a third of it, and the night likewise. And see, like I said, you just had this other event up here, so you're working down into something pretty crazy here, guys. When you get into Revelation verse 8:13, this is the verse that I built the 117 Sept scroll on. Look, what he tells you clearly, that you need to watch the last three woes. Why? Because they're attached to the fifth, sixth, and seventh trumpet. Okay? It really matters. And I know that space folding theory sounds crazy, but look, you have an angel that comes from heaven, flying through mid-heaven, warning the people on the earth that they're getting ready to see an antichrist getting ready to be thrown down in the fifth and sixth trumpet here. Okay? Extremely important that you understand what he's alluding to here. Also, if you look at the 22 chapters of Revelation, you'll realize that the 5th, 6th, and 7th trumpet are reoccurring in those subvisions of the elect, nations and peoples, and Mystery Babylon. And you'll also have the 1260 days reoccur in those chapters of, actually chapter 7 of the elect, chapter 11 through 14 of the nations and peoples, and then if you go to chapter 17 through 19, you have the prophecy of Mystery Babylon. And so if you want to read the book of Revelation in chronological order and cut out the 3 visions that John has, you read it in this manner. Chapter 1 through 6, chapter 8 through 10, chapter 15 and 16, and chapter 20 through 22, and it will make a chronological complete story. Then you add in chapter 7, which is the chapter of the elect. You add in the 4 chapters of the nations and peoples, which are chapter 11 through 14, and then you add in the last 3 chapters of 17 through 19, which is Mystery Babylon, and you realize that he's giving you all these really cool angles to the main story above it. So once you get into this, and like I say, on that 6th seal, you have heaven moving to possibly above us, so an angel can come down into mid-heaven from above. And think about it, everything that's getting ready to occur from now on is coming down from heaven to earth. Okay, so my guess is God has the ability to bend space and time and dimensions and literally move heaven to above us so that he can do what he's told us he's going to do. And then what? This angel comes down with a loud voice and says, look, you need to watch the 5th, 6th, and 7th trumpet because you're going to deal with him for what? 1260 days. You're going to have to deal with him. And look, then you get into what? March 17th of 2026, you have a 5th trumpet. So look, every day from March 12th, you got a trumpet going off that does massive damage across the planet into a 5th trumpet where a 5th angel sounds and a star falls from heaven onto earth, which is Satan. Okay, another star is falling from earth. Just as you had up here, you got a star from heaven falling from earth. I think it's my Archangel Michael. I may be wrong on that, but he's getting ready to stand on the sides of the bottomless pit, so it's probably Michael. It's just my opinion. You may not agree with that one, but I think it makes some sense. The star coming down from heaven is actually Satan, which is going to resurrect an antichrist out of hell or an abyss. And you can see this in Isaiah 14, multiple indications that this thing is dead and that will rise as a supernatural being and have control of the planet for 1260 days. Look, Antichrist is not a man. He's a dead guy, maybe, that turns into a supernatural guy, but he's not just some flesh guy out here walking around, okay? It's not a Macron, it's not a Pope, it's not a Trump, it's not an Obama, it's not anybody. It's a dead Erdogan, which is a first seal, white horseman, Gog of Ezekiel 38 and 39, that will die, and on a 6th seal event, okay, 6th seal event, the 10 nations die, Erdogan dies, you have a drum roll into an Antichrist rising and a bottomless pit coming up here. The bottomless pit comes up first. He opens the bottomless pit. Who's doing this? Michael standing there on the sides of the pit, and he's literally pulling Satan out of heaven forever. Remember, woe, woe to the earth. He's not going to be in heaven anymore. He's being cast down to earth for the 1260 days. And that he's going to deceive most of you because he's the first one that we keep warning you about. Look, you're going to freak out. And I'm not trying to be rash or irrational here. You are going to freak out when heaven appears above you and all of a sudden the star from heaven comes falling down to the earth as what? Antichrist. But you'll think it's Jesus because he warned you of the first one. Do not follow the first one. Do not follow the guy that's getting resurrected on the sixth trumpet. Because you'll realize that the Lord doesn't come back until what? The last trumpet, the seventh trumpet. The pit is going to open up. And what's going to happen? This furnace with great smoke comes out, and you get a darkening of the air around you from the pit of the smoke. And then these scorpions come out and have power to sting the people without the seal of God for up to 5 months. Okay, that's between mid-March of 26 and mid-August of 26, okay? Which is interesting because that mid-August of 26 is when you get the second siege of Israel. I'm just saying. Also, you get Haggai in here talking about a divine message on August 14th of 2026 when they get the thought that they should start doing the rebuilding of the third temple based on that date stamp. And that's usually a Darius the Mede date stamp. So you can sort of see that that would be the second year of Darius the Mede, if I'm not mistaken. It indicates that these scorpions will come out for 5 months and sting, but not kill the men that don't have the seal of God, and they torment them for 5 months. So you got to understand that's a 5-month gap of just craziness before Antichrist appears here on the sixth trumpet. You're getting ready to watch an Antichrist come up here. Okay, so they sting these people, they torment them for 5 months, they're making them miserable because you're getting ready to watch Antichrist come in, and guess what? He wants you to sign that treaty all day long, baby. Sign up. I'll take care of you. I'll take your soul in the process if you want me to. You just need to understand that when you sign that dotted line and you join that beast system in that 1260-day gap of time that's getting ready to come up soon, around March 30th of 2026, once you sign that piece of paper, that is an unforgivable sin, one of them. Once you're on the beast system and you sign up with him, he will not accept you. That's what it tells us. So you need to understand that. You cannot be on the beast system. You cannot buy or sell on that system. So these scorpions come out, they sting men, they can't do anything about it. They show what the scorpions look like, and then look. This is the king over the bottomless pit, which is Antichrist, which getting, Satan, Antichrist, which is getting ready to be expelled out of the abyss, out of hell. And then you have what? The first woe is past because the fifth trumpet is over. So the bottomless pit is opened here. Also, the next day after March 17, 2026, and the fifth trumpet sounds, you have the end of Ramadan, the very next day, going into the new Jewish calendar year. And this brings up the discussion of the creation of man and when the world was actually created, either in Tishri or Nisan, depending on what group you're in. But what's interesting about this is on the sixth trumpet on March 19th of 2026, on the first day of the Jewish calendar, that very next day is the spring equinox. I keep talking about this. He's going to come in looking like the lamb in spring. He's going to mislead lots of people that this is getting ready to happen to them, and they're going to just line up here as he's getting ready to sign a treaty in the next few days with the nations here. Another thing that's interesting is you've got this exodus of the remnant. So on March 20th of 2026, you have 2 Nisan. Well, that's interesting because that was be the date of the red heifer sacrifice on the Mount of Olives just prior to Passover. And if you go to Zechariah, and that would be in Zechariah 13 verse 1, and when you go to Zechariah 14 verse 4 and Revelation 12 verse 14, it talks about the Mount of Olives splitting in half and Jesus allowing the third of the Jews to be exodus to the hidden place for the 1260 days into Edom or Jordan. Also, you have an antichrist on the ground when the sixth trumpet happens, and the false prophet also rises with the antichrist. But you also have a paradigm stamp here. Egypt is broken and the peoples are scattered throughout the nation. So Egypt is starting to be decimated, and they will continue to be decimated in the next few years. But remember, on that sixth seal event, those 10 nations led by Turkey and Erdogan are decimated and destroyed. If you go to Daniel 7, chapter 7, verse 24, it talks about the 10 nations, and then after then, a little horn rises on the sixth trumpet and overthrows 3 regions, because the 10 nations that attacked Israel turn into a residue of 4 regions. Then when Antichrist comes out, he overthrows 3 of the 4 and turns it into a beast kingdom. So now you have a beast kingdom. And this actually would be the decimation of the last kingdom, or the Ottoman Empire. So I went ahead and added that because this is extremely important, because this is the end of the 7th kingdom of the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. It's the Ottomans, okay? And that would turn you into the 8th kingdom, or the beast kingdom. So it would be the destruction of the Ottoman Empire. Now, there's a lot of people I'm hearing out here saying that we're going to have a reformed Roman Empire. Okay, this does not make any sense on multiple levels. It logically doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense in general. Look, your 6th kingdom was the Roman Empire, which were the legs of iron, east and west divisions. Okay, the 7th kingdom is not the Roman Empire again. Okay, it clearly tells you they're all 7 distinct kingdoms and captivities of Jews in time. So when the Romans fell and they moved into Constantinople, Turkey, when you had the Constantine phase of the Bible, guess what? The Ottomans took them over time, and so the Ottomans is the next in line. Once the Ottomans fall and the 7th kingdom falls, which is the wound that dies and then reses as a 8th kingdom or beast system, you know, the wound that's the beast that has the head wound that comes back to life. That's what he's talking about here. And then right after this, the next day, you see the 2 witnesses appear. This is extremely important because they come up approximately 3.5 to 4 days prior to the signing of the treaty, okay? Because they die 3.5 to 4 days prior to rapture, but they do prophesy for a full 1260 days, 42 months, 3.5 years, okay? So that period of 1260 days would fall between March 26th of 2026 and September 6th of 2029, and the Feast of Trumpets would be on September 10th of 2029, okay? As you can see here. Once you see the 2 witnesses perish, you have 3.5 days to the rapture event. And he clearly tells you that when you see the 2 witnesses lie in the street for 3.5 days and then they rise, it's over. Okay? Because rapture's happened. So when you see them die, they say to run to the mountains. Do not even collect your stuff, because you only got 3.5 days left. You could probably, there's no way you're going to starve to death to get through the next 3.5 days. Just run to the mountains. The city's going to be destroyed and you're going to be taken away 3.5 days later after they perish. Okay? Extremely important. That is not right now though. Okay, they're appearing right now for 1260 days, but they appear 4 days before the signing of the treaty with the nations. Okay, now it's interesting that on March 28th of 2026, you have this great Sabbath event prior to Passover. So I don't know a lot about this, but I thought it was an interesting timing. Now, when you get to March 30th, you start the signing of the treaty with the Antichrist and the nations that go against Israel or anyone that supports them. Look, this is not a peace treaty for Israel. Israel's under massive duress, and they've been overcome by all these armies. The remnant has been left, and 2/3 of the people in Israel are dead or perished. And what's interesting is once you get to sign the treaty of death, or the covenant of death, on March 30th of 2026, this starts Antichrist phase of 1260 days. But this up here is the start of the two witnesses phase of 1260 days, which is 4 days prior to this one from Antichrist when he takes over. This 1260 days would run between March 30th of 2026 and September 10th of 2029, which is when you would have the seventh trumpet or the rapture event when the Lord Jesus would come back. And what's interesting about this is right after March 30th of 2026, you start Passover. So here we are again. Antichrist is looking like Jesus on the very first day of Passover, and he's going to look like he's the one you should follow, guys. Don't follow the sixth trumpet. I'm telling you, do not follow the sixth trumpet. It is not the Lord Jesus. This first guy is the bad guy. Just realize it. Do not follow him. When he comes up and signs a treaty on the 30th going into Passover, and then you all sign the dotted line right after that, and you get on the beast system, your soul will be lost forever. It's just that simple. Then we get into a bunch of paradigm stamps. On May 19th of 2026, the king of Egypt and the peoples are cut off from the world based on these verses, and the paradigm date stamp based on the king and the time he was in place. You take the year of the king, the day and the month, extrapolate the year of the king to the modern day king today, and then you apply it to the Jewish calendar, and it will tell you what day it falls on. Famine is so severe on June 19th of 2026 that no food is found in Jerusalem, and then look right after that, we see the walls are broken down based on these paradigm stamps here. 4,600 people are taken away, and then also President Reuben Rivlin is captured on the plains of Jericho on June 24th of 2026. His eyes are removed. He reflects Zedekiah. Both of his sons are killed, and then Revlin is taken to Turkey with pretty much everybody that he cares about. When you get into August 12th of 2026, you got another complete solar eclipse, okay? And when August 14th of 2026, right after this solar eclipse, Haggai receives a divine message to start rebuilding the temple, the third temple, and that's in Haggai 1 verse 1 and 2. And then right after that, you see another partial blood moon event, okay? There's also a 15-day gap of time between this solar eclipse and this blood moon event. On September 6th of 2026, based on this paradigm stamp of Haggai 1 verse 14 through 15, the remnant of the people start rebuilding the third temple. So there you go. That's when the third temple starts getting rebuilt, guys. I can tell you when they're going to finish it here for long. September 12th and 13th of 2026, you have the Feast of Trumpets. Right after this, so they're going to start building the temple. They go into the fall feast. Right after the fall feast, the son of Netanyahu kills that regional leader of Antichrist in 2 Kings 25 verse 23 and 25. You also can find that in Jeremiah 41 verse 1 through 18. When you get into October 16th of 2026, this is the end of the 1290 days after the daily sacrifices as a continual burnt offerings were stopped on this very specific date of April 5th of 2023, because you're working into abomination here for long. Also, I'm going to drop down here real quick. This is the date of November 13th of 26, when the 1335 days completes from April 5th of 2023. On November, in between this, though, is, which I think is extremely interesting, because you're talking about daily sacrifices and continual burnt offerings in both these steps. On November 17th to 26th, Jeremiah, Baruch, and the Jews proclaim a fast to the Lord, because they're in a terrible condition in Israel right now. On December 4th of 2026, you have the first day of Hanukkah. Haggai states that God will shake the heavens and the earth, based on Haggai 2, verse 10 through 22. December 15th of 2026, Jerusalem, this is another paradigm stamp. Jerusalem and Israel is smitten and utterly destroyed. And then right after that, in February of 27, on February 6th, you have another solar eclipse. So you've got this one up here in August. Then you come down into February, and you have a solar eclipse on the 6th of February. On the 8th, God places a lamentation against Egypt and states God will destroy everything there. You also have that potential one Adair effect against Egypt, which is the 9th plague on the Egyptians for the retaliation of killing all the children. And then on February 20th through the 21st to 27, you have a blood moon event, and that is also a 15-day gap of period of time between this solar eclipse and this blood moon eclipse, which makes sense because they always happen in the middle and the end or the beginning of the month. So there's usually a 15-day gap, a period of these times. Right after this, on March 20th, you start the spring equinox. Going to April 21st to 28th of 2027, you go into Passover again. Then in this gap of time, look at that, in this gap of time during Passover, Egypt is cast down, and all these nations are being affected. Iraq, Iran, Turkey, Jordan, Israel are under judgment. Right after that, in July, you have, look at all these blood moons and things, guys. That's what I mean. Look at all the blood moons. This is unusual activity. So you go into July 18, 19, 2027, you got a partial blood moon. August 7th or August 2nd of 2027, you have a solar eclipse that's complete. August 16, 17, 2027, you have a partial blood moon. October 2nd and 3rd of 27, you have the Feast of Trumpets. Then in January 11th and 12th of 28, you have another partial blood moon. January 26th to 28, you go into an annual solar eclipse. On March 1st of 2028, based on Zedekiah chapter 1, verse 7 through 17, you would see the completion of the rebuilding of the third temple. So if you want to know when the third temple is getting completed, it will be completed on March 1st of 28, based on Zechariah 1, verse 7 through 17. Then you have another spring equinox on March 20th to 28. You go into Passover between April 10th and 17th to 28. And then you come into what? The completion of the strong generation of May 14th of 2028. Okay? And like I say, this is where I wanted to bring this up again. I had one issue on the paradigm chart I had to figure out. Look, I know it's in a 7-year Shemitah cycle that we're in right now. At least I believe so, because you're in the strong generation of the Jews. Okay? Between May 14th of 1948 and May 14th, 2028. So what was the question I was struggling with? If you look at Psalm 90:10, you have to decide, is based on what he's saying, Is it the Feast of Trumpets of 2027? Is it the Feast of Trumpets of 2028, which would happen right after this strong generation? Or is it the Feast of Trumpets of 2029, which would take you into the year on the biblical calendar of 2030, which would complete the 2,000-year process of Jesus dying in 30 AD and then coming back in 230 AD? So once I uncompressed it and didn't short the Shemitah cycle and took it to the completion of the Shemitah through the Feast of Trumpets of 2029, everything lined up. Then right after this in July, of 6th and 7th of July of 2028, you have another blood moon event. July 27th or 22nd of 28, you have another solar eclipse event. Okay, now I want to show you something here. Let's go back and just look here. Look at all the blood moon and solar eclipses that are happening in this year of 27 to 28. Okay, I just want to bring this to your attention as you're moving into the end of the strong generation and you're walking into an abominational event around December 13th of 2028 on the 25th of Kislev. Okay, once you get through this last solar eclipse, which is a complete solar eclipse, which is interesting because the first one in this gap of period of time really is a complete solar eclipse on August 12th of 2026. And so you've got this gap of 2 years to this one in July 22nd of 28. There's just a lot going on there, guys. When you get into September 21st, 22nd, and 28, you go into the Feast of Trumpets. On November 22nd of 28, Zechariah warns that God will soon make the pleasant land desolate since the Jews would not listen and repent and quit adulterizing and adulterating and everything else that they're doing at this moment in time. And so this tells you, based on this date stamp of Zechariah 7 verse 11 or 12 through 14, that he's getting ready to make the land desolate. That's a date stamp. I'm not making the date stamps up. They're based on kings of the past to the future. December 3rd of 2028, you have the 15th day of Kislev, which is when abomination of desolation is set up on the altar based on 1 Maccabees verse 57 through 62, and abomination of desolation occurs on the 25th of Kislev in the year of 2028, December 13th. When you get to and that's interesting, right after that, again, you have another complete blood moon between December 31st of 2028 and the new year of the Gregorian calendar, at least, of January 1st of 2029. When you go into March 30th and April 7th of 2029, you go back into Passover. You got a solar, look at all the blood moons and solar eclipses here. June 12th of 29, you got a partial solar eclipse. June 25th and 26th of 29, you have a complete blood moon. July 11th of 29, you have a partial solar eclipse. And then here on July 21st of 29, you have the 9th of Av, which is the third temple destruction. So that tells you when the third temple destruction occurs. It also lets you know, based on the information in the past, that both other temples were destroyed on the 9th of Av. One in July, the first one in July of 586 BC, and the second temple destruction occurred on the 9th of Av of August 30th of 70 AD. When you get into September 6th of 29, this is when the 2 witnesses perish, okay? This is 4 days prior to the Feast of Trumpets of 2029, September 10th. Now, these 2 witnesses will lie in the street. If you go back to the Hebrew, it's more of like they're in an arena and people are watching over them and seeing whether they're going to to rise like Jesus, because they're going to leave them lay there for 3.5 days. Remember, the witnesses have prophesied and told them that they were wrong for 1260 days. They are ecstatic that these two beings are dead on the ground, and they don't expect them to rise because they don't think there's a supernatural power called God and Jesus up there. So they're throwing gifts around and they're celebrating and getting drunk, and 3.5 years of these guys, and now they're gone, and then they rise, okay? And right after that, you end the 7-year Shemitah cycle between September 27th of 2022 and September 9th of 2029, which is your completion of your 2,000 years from the crucifixion of Jesus on April 7th, on a Friday in 30 AD, on 14 Nisan, to his second return on the Feast of Trumpets of 2029, which would be the first day of the millennial year of 2030. And so when you get to the sunset of September 9th of 2029, you start the new year of 2030. I had one last correction that I wanted to bring to your attention. On the September 10th of 2029 date, I actually have it on the original take of 2026, but you can tell it's in line with the 2029 dates. And so I just wanted to let you know that I had made a typo error there, and I just wanted to correct that. You have what? The ending of the next woe, okay? Now I want to explain this a little bit because I got the 7th trumpet down here. So when the 6th trumpet ends, you have the 2nd woe, and the 3rd woe is getting ready to happen, which would be what? The 7th trumpet sounding the last angel with the last trumpet prior to the wrath or the bowls of God being poured down on the wicked, which you're not appointed for. You're not appointed for the wrath of God, which happens in Revelation 15:1. And when you go to Revelation 15:2, that is the rapture or the removal of the body of Christ, okay? Doesn't happen in the subchapters, okay? Look, the 5th trumpet happens in Revelation 9:1. The 6th trumpet happens in Revelation 9:13. 7th trumpet happens in Revelation 15:1, which takes you into a bowl phase. He's telling you that the last angel with the last trumpet is getting ready to sound, okay? And he clearly tells you that when this happens, and you can sort of see this in Revelation 10:7 also, as we're going to go into this, the kingdoms of the world have become the kingdoms of the Lord and of his Christ, and he will reign forever and forever. When you go into Revelation 10:7, when the last trumpet does not sound, but he tells you when it begins to sound, which is here, okay, actually here, excuse me, you will have the mystery of God be completed or finished, as he declared to his servants the prophets. So the 7th trumpet does not sound on Revelation 10:7. And then what happens right after 10:7? He goes into a vision. He eats the little scroll, and then he prophesies against the nations and peoples, which it clearly tells you is going to happen at the end of chapter 10, leading into the next 4 chapters, which are the prophecy against the nations and the peoples. Once he comes out of that vision from verse 10:7, he moves into what? A rapture event in Revelation 15:1 and 2. So now you have a 7th trumpet. The 7th trumpet sounds here. And you're here till then, or you're dead, and then you rise at this moment in time if you're a believer in the Son of God, Jesus. Because this rapture event will only be for the true believers of Jesus, or the people that believe in Jesus the Son. The people that do not believe in Jesus do not rise and are not judged until the white throne comes down in Revelation 20, and they're judged in the book of life based on their works because they do not believe in the Son of God, Jesus. Then look what he tells you here, and you can see this in Revelation 15. The seven trumpet sounds here, and I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous. 7 angels having the last 7 plagues. Why? He didn't blow it in Revelation 10:7. He is blowing it right now. At this very moment in time, at the very beginning of this chapter. And then he hands out what? The 7 trumpets, or the 7 bowls, excuse me. The 7 bowls filled with the wrath of God. Okay? And then what? You see the rapture. Look at this. And I saw, as it were, sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, over Antichrist, and of his image. So you could look at Satan or Antichrist. Either one, you've conquered both of them to get to the rapture event. Over his mark, over his system, over his name, are standing like a sea of glass, having the harps of God, singing what? The song of Moses and things. You need to understand how long you're going to be here. And to the Feast of Trumpets of 29, which is right here, you have 1660 days from today. Okay? From Monday. Just started in the evening, actually, today, or on the 23rd, but anyway. Okay, so this is when the rapture occurs. You need to understand this. Also, the 2 witnesses will rise at the same time as everybody else. Okay? There's only one rapture or removal of the body of Christ, the people that believe in Jesus. So the 2 witnesses prophesy for 1260 days. So think back. The 2 witnesses come up 4 days before the covenant of death on March 26th of 2026, because the covenant's signed on March 30th. Then they perish 4 days prior to rapture, which would happen on September 6th of 2029. Once you get to the Feast of Trumpets, or the 7th trumpet of September 10th of 2029, you would have your rapture event. Okay? So that gives you a really good layout of how this is going to play out. That starts the 1,000-year millennial reign with the Lord Jesus. Then what happens? He starts pouring the bowls of the 7 bowls of God's wrath out on the wicked. And this can be found in basically Revelation 15 and 16 talks about the 7 bowls of God's wrath. And you just had in Revelation 15, 1 and 2, the rapture event after the 7th trumpet sounds. And then what happens? You have what we call the 10 days of awe on the Jewish calendars. And once you get into the bull phase, you get into the 10 days of Av. Now, there's no way to really determine what days these exactly fall on, because there's 10 days with basically 6 to 7 bulls here. So I didn't really go into putting dates on these just because they're in a gap of period of time. You got the first bull, which is poured out on people or out on the earth. These sores come upon them like a plague. These are the people that took the mark of the beast or worshiped the image. They also, because they took the mark of the beast or the image and was on the beast system, they cannot gain access into the millennial. Okay, he tells you right there. The first judgment of the bulls is against the people that took the mark. So 1260 days, guys, you're going to have to figure out how to deal with this. Second bull is poured out on the sea, and it all becomes blood, and all the stuff in the sea dies. Third bull, rivers and fountains of the rivers turn to blood, similar to the 5th trumpet, or the 3rd trumpet, excuse me, when wormwood comes down and poisons all the water, streams and rivers and things. Fourth bull, you get a pouring out of a vial on the sun, and it's given them the ability to scorch men with fire. The 5th bowl is Mystery Babylon, which is against the seat of Satan or the beast. Now, I'm going to talk about this for just a second. I believe that Mystery Babylon is Pergamus, Turkey, based on the letters in Revelation 2 and 3 about Pergamus and the two sword judgment against Pergamus. When you get into Isaiah, it talks about Mystery Babylon. Mystery Babylon is fallen. And then I believe it's Isaiah 21. All of these fleeing nations are heading towards Saudi Arabia and all these different places. So they would be coming from Pergamus, Turkey. And also, if you go into the fifth bowl judgment, it talks about Mystery Babylon has fallen, okay? So you're talking about where is he pouring the fifth bowl judgment down upon, and why is he pouring this very specific bowl down on Mystery Babylon, and where is that? Now, the other suggestion, and the only other suggestion I have for Mystery Babylon, is it could be Mecca or Saudi Arabia because of the oil and all of the ties to the Muslims and things down there. But I've wrote a fairly extensive paper on why this could be Pergamus, Turkey. And so I'm going with he's pouring a fifth bowl down on the seed of Satan or the beast. And I think we should look at that and have a conversation more about that. The sixth bowl is poured down on the Euphrates, and they prepare for the Battle of Armageddon. Also, when this occurs, you have the three frogs come out of Satan, Antichrist, and the false prophet. And what happens? When you get into Revelation 16, at the end of Revelation 16, the false prophet and the Antichrist are thrown in the lake of fire. And then when you go into Revelation 20, Satan is bound for 1,000 years. Why? Because when you get into chapter 17 through 19, it's a prophecy against Mystery Babylon. You can see that easily too, because it tells you at the end of 16, he's going to go into a prophecy about Mystery Babylon, and he takes him into a vision in Revelation 17:1. Okay, right at the very beginning of the chapter. When you read the three chapters, 17, 18, and 19, you come back out of the vision in 20. Guess what? Satan's bound for 1,000 years, and at the end of the 1,000 years, he throws Satan in the lake of fire with the Antichrist and the false prophet. So just realize that that's sort of how that works. When you get into September 19th of 2029, you have Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, which is right after the 10 days of awe. Okay, and then you have the seventh bowl poured in the air, and that cleanses the earth so that we can redeposit it down, because we are in the millennial period here. And so you have the seventh bowl poured down. You go into the Feast of Tabernacles. Tabernacles means that you are now among, or, well, I should say this differently. God is among you, okay? Jesus is among you. We pale in existence to God and His Son, so I want to always put them first. Anyway, tabernacles means that God is among you. And I think it's very interesting because right after that, on October 1st, we have that Shemini Atzeret, which seems to always be an interesting time that things tend to happen on. So I thought that was an interesting timing of that. I decided to throw that down. You get to December 1st of 2029. You have the first day of Hanukkah. You've got another solar eclipse, partial eclipse on December 5th. You got a complete blood moon on December 20th, 21st of 29. Then we have one last date stamp on February 6th of 2030 on 3 Adar. This is interesting because if you look at this verse in Ezra 6:15, we're talking about the 6th year of Darius. So Darius the Mede, which is the leader of the Kurds, which was elected in October 20th of 2024, his 6th year would be October 20th of 2030. And what's interesting is the only other date stamp prior to this that brings up Darius the Mede was be the 4th year. So that takes us from the Shemitah cycle into the millennial phase, where the house of God would be finished right before Passover. So this means that the house of God would be finished and completed before the 1,000-year millennial period, and Passover would occur, so we can actually do Passover on the temple of God in the millennial itself. So when we come back to the chart, this is your year of solar eclipses that we're getting ready to go into. Like I say, March to March. March of 2025 to March of 2026, with a potential 6 seal event getting ready to destroy the planet as you go into a signing of the treaty by March 30th of 2026. I've taken you from about this area here all the way to the end of the chart, okay? On top of not only all the events that play out within this period of time, from about in here to the end of the story, it gives you all these astrological blood moon and solar eclipses that play out in the middle of all this, okay? It's built in the Shemitah cycle of the 7-year Shemitah cycle between September 27th of 2022, September 9th of 2029, which is the last week of Daniel, in the strong generation of the Jews, which would end up right before the Feast of Trumpets of 2029. And so if you take this all into consideration, on top of, once you get to the Feast of Trumpets of 2029, it takes you into the year of 2030, which would be 2,000 years since the crucifixion of Jesus in 30 AD. You have now completed your 2,000-year gap of time, and you are now in the 70th week of Daniel that plays out within a 7-year Shemitah cycle. Get your oil in your lamp, guys. It's so important that you understand where you are in time. This is getting ready to break. And when you get to about the middle of March, in the middle of Ramadan, as you're moving into the end of March into an invasion by Turkey, based on everything I'm showing you, that's what I guess is going to happen. So hopefully you'll know what to look for. And then once you see those things happen, you need to start getting the oil in your lamp, because the next year is going to be horrific as the whole system breaks down and there won't be any food by the end of the year. So God bless. Get right with God. Find the open door, Jesus. Be safe out there and do what you need to do to take care of your families.